And now we want to get to an exclusive. 3 inmates at the prison in Elkton, which is south of Youngstown, we've learned have tested positive for COVID-19. And as 3 News investigator Rachel Polansky found out, that number is likely higher. The problem is the prison doesn't have enough tests to know for sure.
When Joseph Maley became a corrections officer at Elkton,
we know what we're going into when we sign up for this career.
He understood that something could happen to him on a daily basis. COVID-19 flipped the script.
But nothing to where we would think that we'd be bringing something home that could actually injure or create issues for our family, or our kids or our loved ones.
Maley also serves as the president of the union that represents Elkton officers, and he says there's a lot of anxiety after 3 inmates tested positive for COVID-19 and another 80 are showing symptoms.
They're not giving them the proper testing equipment.
Those inmates are now in isolation, but the majority of them will not be tested because the Bureau of Prisons only gave Elkton, which houses 2,500 inmates, including former Cuyahoga County Commissioner Jimmy DeMora, 5 testing kits. One inmate told 3 News in an email, "It is a mess in here. There is no social distancing happening in here." Something that doesn't surprise Dr. Megan Novisky, a criminology professor at Cleveland State.
So things as simple as keeping social distance, having adequate access to soaps and hand sanitizers, that's all problematic in a prison.
And why Dr. Novisky says prisons and jails need to take action.
They need to be releasing as many people as is safely possible from prisons and jails.
To your left.
Jails across Ohio have already taken steps to reduce inmate population, like Cuyahoga County, which reduced population from 2,000 inmates to 1,300. Prisons like Elkton have yet to take action. Maley worries it's only a matter of time before they run out of personal protective equipment or PPE.
We have enough PPE gear for now, but if this lingers probably another 2, 3, 4 weeks, we're not going to have the proper PPE.
As of 5 o'clock this evening, the Federal Bureau of Prisons has reported that 57 inmates and 37 staff members at federal prisons across the country had tested positive for COVID-19. Rachel Polansky, 3 News.
In an exclusive, 3 News investigator Rachel Polansky found out that the problem there might be worse than first reported.
Olivia Garcia struggles to get the words out.
Frustrating and difficult.
As she recounts the phone call that no child wants to receive.
At 1:30 in the morning, I got the call that he had passed Thursday at 10:47.
6 days after her father, Margarito Garcia Fragoso, tested positive for COVID-19, the 65-year-old, who was serving 10 years on drug and gun charges, died alone at a hospital somewhere near Elkton. There was no last visit, no chance to say goodbye, only silence from prison officials.
To me, it felt like they did not have a heart for it. He's still a human being. He's still my father.
I don't know what to say, for real, man.
After our exclusive reporting, 3 News received multiple emails from inmates' families and this video.
This shit is serious, bro.
A plea for help by an inmate who was willing to show his face and admit to possession of a smuggled cell phone to show conditions.
And pretty much everything that the inmate said in that video was untrue.
Joseph Maley, the president of the union that represents Elkton officers, tells me the inmates' claims are false. However, Maley still paints a tragic picture of what's taking place inside the prison, not only with inmates, but with guards.
They're angry about that because they believe that the Bureau of Prisons is kind of disregarded them and just leave them behind, even though we're the ones on the front line.
Maley also says that as of today, 37 Elkton inmates are now hospitalized and another 71 are in isolation at the prison, all experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. And those 37 hospitalized in the community all require guards, leaving the prison woefully understaffed.
To see the state of Ohio stepping up and trying to help us, any way that they possibly can, that begs the question, why should they have to? We're the federal government. Why isn't the Bureau of Prisons doing it?
It's a question inmates' families are asking too.
Well, my biggest fear is that I'm going to just wake up to a call one day saying that my father is dead.
Isabella Pira is the daughter of another inmate who reached out to 3 News after she found out that her father tested positive for COVID-19.
We should get an update at least once. It's been like a week.
She understands that the prison must be secretive. She's just worried about her dad, Yusuf Pira, who was sentenced to 10 years for his role in a marijuana growing operation.
I don't need to know where he is. That's fine with me. I just want to know if he's okay.
3 News asked attorney and law professor Michael Benza what, if anything, inmates and their families can do in these types of situations.
You can petition the warden for a compassionate release.
But figuring out which inmates can be released and won't be a risk to society takes time, something overwhelmed prisons don't have.
The institutions are scrambling to just react to what this situation is.
While Maley tells me that more than 100 prisoners are symptomatic, the Bureau of Prisons is telling the public that only 10 inmates have tested positive. So why the discrepancy? I asked the BOP, but I have not received a response. Rachel Polansky, 3 News.
Governor DeWine announced Ohio's first state prison death from COVID-19. As you heard there, concerned families of inmates are filing emergency reprieves, pleading with the governor to release thousands of prisoners. Tonight, investigator Rachel Polansky takes the debate to the state attorney general, as well as the wives of inmates, in this 3 News exclusive.
Today, the governor called on the National Guard to lend help as he confirmed 146 positive cases among inmates and 119 positive cases among staff statewide. More than 100 of those cases are at Marion Correctional.
As his wife, it's really difficult not to be scared for his safety and health.
That's where Azura Crispino's husband, James Jalalia, is serving 17 years for a robbery he committed in 2008. He's eligible for early release this June. Crispino is hoping that he won't have to wait that long.
We need to be taking extreme and immediate steps to be decarcerating as many people as possible.
By sending this emergency reprieve to the governor, Cleveland attorney Sarah Gelsomino is trying to do just that.
The governor has the ability under the law to, without a hearing and without review, release prisoners.
Now, this does not mean that inmates would be sent home for good.
Switch to your left.
It means their sentences would be temporarily suspended for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We know that the governor has a lot of executive power, should he choose to use it.
Governor DeWine has started taking steps to release 167 inmates due to overcrowding concerns. But there are 49,000 inmates in the state. 167 does not account for even 1% of them.
That is a drop in the bucket.
I'm glad it was only a drop in the bucket.
Attorney General Dave Yost says he has not seen the emergency reprieve, but he already knows how he feels about it.
Our prisons have a lot of dangerous people in them, and the notion that we somehow ought to just open the doors of the prisons and let everybody out is an absurdity.
He also says that inmates and their families' concerns are largely overblown.
96.5% of the people over 60 recover from this disease.
Words that do not soothe Chastity Bowman.
We're afraid that they're going to get sick and die.
Whose husband, Rufus Bowman, is serving 9 years for robbery and assault at Toledo Correctional, where 2 inmates have tested positive.
This virus inside the prisons is like trapping a tornado inside of a box, and it's going to spin out of control.
And as I reported last week over at Elkton, our state's only federal prison, 24 inmates and 14 staff have tested positive for COVID-19 and 3 inmates have died. Russ.
Rachel, I understand things are not much better at the Cuyahoga County Jail. Is that correct?
That is also correct. Just yesterday, we confirmed that 21 inmates over at the county jail have been confirmed for COVID-19.
Wow. Okay. Rachel Polansky, thank you.
Behind these prison walls, the number of COVID-19 cases continues to explode.
We just in here, look, all day, and guys is coughing, and there's just no way to escape it, bro. So
that's Michael Powell, serving 17 years for a robbery he committed in 2007, describing life inside Marion.
And I ain't been to the store in like a month, so the essential things like hygiene, toothpaste, soap, deodorant, all that stuff is about to be non-existent here in a second.
While he's awaiting a judge's decision on his early release, Powell found out that he had COVID-19.
It's pandemonium in the pandemic, bro. It's like really, really bad right now.
It could have just been handled much differently.
Kevin Ballew is a friend of Powell's and a former prisoner. He spent 5 years at Marion and says there's no way to social distance there.
Imagine like the size of a warehouse with about 300 plus people in it, single racks, and then bunk beds as well.
Another major issue Ohio is facing, an already overcrowded prison population. Governor DeWine has started taking steps to release 167 prisoners, But there are 49,000 in the state. 167 does not account for even 1% of them.
By tomorrow, if not today, everyone will have it.
And this isn't a problem just affecting prisoners.
They're beat down, they're wore down.
Christopher Mabe, who heads the union that represents corrections officers, says not enough testing is being done and not enough PPE is available.
I mean, people are just actually terrified of taking this thing back home to your families.
Cleveland attorney Sarah Gelsomino says the best way to stop the spread is to release some inmates. That's why she sent an emergency reprieve to the governor 2 weeks ago.
The governor has the ability under the law to, without a hearing and without review, release prisoners.
Now, that does not mean inmates would be sent home for good. It means their sentences would be temporarily suspended for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We know that the governor has a lot of executive power, should he choose to use it.
Rachel Polansky, 3 News.
We do have some breaking news to bring you now. A federal judge has just ordered Elkton prison officials to release or transfer the medically vulnerable inmates as coronavirus continues to rage inside the low-security federal facility.
It has been nearly a month now since a federal judge ordered Elkton Prison to transfer vulnerable inmates because of the pandemic. 3 News investigator Rachel Polansky tells us it's an order that has gone unheeded, leaving more than 800 inmates, including former Cuyahoga County Commissioner Jimmy DeMora, in limbo.
Elkton Prison made national news for all the wrong reasons.
This shit is serious, bro.
Symbolizing the scope of the COVID-19 pandemic overwhelming America's prisons.
On April 1st, we were contacted by the prison, by the health director, to let us know that our father overnight was rushed to the hospital, that he had tested positive for COVID-19.
At least 44 Elkton inmates were hospitalized and 14 were on ventilators. In all, 9 died. Federal Judge James Gwynn said prison officials acted with, quote, deliberate indifference. That's why he ordered Elkton take action and transfer or release medically vulnerable inmates. That was on April 22nd. Since then, we know of just 3 inmates who have left the prison, each one in a body bag.
We've been extremely disappointed at the Bureau of Prisons' progress in meeting the requirements of that order.
Prison attorneys have spent a month appealing the judge's decision while determining how to transfer 800 medically vulnerable inmates. Jimmy DeMora is one of them. Prison officials denied his plea for home confinement because he has not served half of his sentence.
If you set up a test that is designed for everyone to fail it, then everyone will fail it. And that's what's going on right now with home confinement.
DeMora's attorney filed court papers citing Paul Manafort, President Trump's former campaign manager, who was already released despite serving less than half of his 7-year sentence. Meanwhile, as the days pass by, the virus seems to have peaked at Elkton. Joseph Maley, the Correction Officers Union president, says only 10 inmates are hospitalized right now.
It is trending in the right direction as far as the pandemic seems to have just about run its course at Elkton, as long as we stay status quo.
Now, it's unclear if Elkton has truly peaked. For now, all we know is the judge's order stands. But despite the passing of time, little movement has taken place inside Elkton Prison. Rachel Polansky, 3 News.
Okay, Rachel.
More than 800 inmates will not be transferred or released over COVID-19 concerns.
3 News investigator Rachel Polansky has been on this story since the very beginning. She explains this surprising reversal by the courts.
We want our loved ones to be safe, so it's very disappointing.
It was among the hardest hit prisons in America. 9 inmates dead from the coronavirus, dozens more hospitalized and on ventilators, and nowhere to hide for the 2,300 inmates inside the walls of Elkton Federal Prison. In April, lawyers with the ACLU had won an injunction forcing the Bureau of Prisons to identify medically vulnerable inmates and transfer them out, some to other prisons, some to their homes. Even the U.S. Supreme Court refused to stop it. But then prison attorneys appealed further, saying that Judge James Gwynn's strict deadlines to remove the inmates was unsafe and impractical. Now, in a 2-1 decision, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which initially upheld Gwynn's ruling, reversed course and struck down the order. ACLU senior attorney David Carey told me that he was, quote, extremely disappointed by the ruling. He said they're considering their next steps, but the fight is not over. As of today, 1,829 inmates have been tested, with 310 being positive. While inmates like Jimmy Demora, who got the virus and was held in isolation, remain in Elkton, family members of inmates tell me they're still hopeful.
I'm going to remain positive. I'm not going to allow that news to just stop me from believing.
Meanwhile, no Elkton inmates have died since May 8th, and prison officials tell me that at least 163 inmates have recovered from the coronavirus. Rachel Polansky, 3 News.